ईश्वरम्बा सुता श्रीमन् पूर्वा सन्ध्या.
So I'm Devon, and I'm here with Shusara Akona Kumara of the Kumara Center. And we want to create a video, we talked about this, to answer questions that arise when people aren't familiar with the Kumara Center or with you specifically or the work you do. I think a lot of things are tossed around, like spiritual enlightenment, spiritual awareness, being self-realized, being self-aware. And a lot of people, I don't think, have a real good understanding of what that means, especially when we get to the heftier stuff, when you talk about doing spiritual work, inner work, working with the ego, that kind of thing. And not everybody's had the opportunity to work specifically with somebody like you, who can answer all of that in the most clear and insightful way that applies to them where they are. So, Shusara Akona Kumara, I've been a student of Shusara's. She is what I call my spiritual guide for a number of years. And she is the founder of the Kumara Center.
Sounds like we have birds out in the hallway.
That's the resident mouse.
Oh, there he goes.
Can you edit that out?
If we want to.
If you want. So basically I just wanted to start by having you talk a little bit about who you are. And what does it mean to be a spiritual guide, or when somebody says, I'm a student of Shusara's, I'm a student of a spiritual guide, or I work with a spiritual guide. I'd like for you to explain a little bit about, what that means to people, or what it means to us. Just expand on that if you can.
Okay, so to be a spiritual guide, the way that I function in my work is that those who are called to do that are people who have done enough dissolution work to function from outside of the paradigm of duality to the point where they're capable of guiding others in doing that same amount of work. So unlike regular kind of spiritual teachers that we think of who maybe have taken lots of classes or gotten certifications, things like that, the unique thing about the work that I do is it only comes because I have fully experienced and walked the path, and because of that is the piece that enabled me to then guide others to walk their own paths. So some might call me a teacher, and that's okay, because there is, teaching that goes on in the work that I do. There are concepts that have to be taught and spiritual truths that have to be taught. But the greater portion of what I do is to function as a guide, meaning I'm there to, we utilize, your life, the life of the student, and the things going on in that lifetime to, we use those life experiences to show them how their reality has been created, how it's been set up, and how it continues to perpetuate itself based on the individual patterning. And what I'm capable of doing is seeing very objectively at exactly what's running for the student, so that then as they do their work, if they run into places where they're blocked and they can't see, I can see. So I can usually through a system of kind of questioning, I'll get them to a place where then they, through the answering the questions, now they start to be able to see what it is they need to see without me directly telling them, because it has to be experiential. If I'm telling a student, and at times I do, but if I'm telling a student, generally they don't have the capacity to hold it because it hasn't been their experience yet. So that's it.
All right, so like a question comes up in my mind, you talk about a student and they're doing their work. How does that all get started? Like, what makes a person decide they need to do work? Or what makes a person start gravitating towards somebody like you? Like, how does
what
that all
made you decide?
That's a good question. I still don't know. There was always those things in me that didn't quite, there was always questions in me that couldn't be answered by the religious world that I was in, by other I would say, teachers around me at the time. They could only answer to a certain level, but the questions were still very burning in me. You know, there's got to be more than this. This doesn't feel right. This seems strange. I don't fit in here. I feel like I'm meant for more. I feel like there's more to all this. This doesn't seem to make sense to me. There was all this stuff going on inside of me, and the questions just weren't answered anywhere in a way that felt really clear and right to me. And I didn't know I was looking for a spiritual guide. I wouldn't have even said that was ever in my vocabulary before. And I know that when I walked into a meetup group, that somebody else, you know, Mary Beth Wren actually referred me to your meetup group. She's like, "Oh, you'll love it, go." I didn't even ask her what it was. I was like, "Oh, this will be fun." Little did I know. And then I know that when I walked in and I looked at you, there was something so powerfully truthful and real. And I just went, whatever she's got, I've got to know what that is. That's something going on there for me. And I didn't know I didn't know what you did. I didn't know you were a spiritual. I had no concept of any of that. But I just knew in my heart, I was like, that's what I've got to go find out what's going on there. And then you and I started talking, and it evolved from there. Then I started working with you, and it began, I would say, and so it began. I feel like my life really began at that point. But for other people who may not have quite that issue in life, maybe they don't have those burning questions where they were constantly seeking for things to make sense, or what other things would make a person start to feel as if, because you work with a lot of people, what I'm trying to get to, I think, to give people maybe a broader perspective if they can't really identify with what I'm saying.
Right.
What other things arise in people's life to draw them to, I'm looking for something, I don't really know what I'm looking for, but maybe it is this kind of thing.
And sometimes they do know what they're looking for, and it runs the complete gamut. I've had students who've been with me a really long time who have walked in the door really pretty clueless about what they were walking into and never walked back out. I've had lots who came thinking that this was exactly the work they wanted to do, but in very short time they walked out and never came back because it was so challenging on a personal level. Many students come in because they have hit rock bottom, and I have several students who really truly were suicidal when they kind of entered my awareness. People who have been on antidepressants for decades and things like that, really struggling for a really long time. And I've had others who have been on a spiritual path for quite some time, some who have literally been in ashrams, done that route. They've done, deeper Eastern teachings, Buddhism, or maybe followed Vedanta or Advaita. And it's kind of all of it. I think that, from the greater perspective, what's going on is that the divine in you, that hasn't lost its memory, even though you don't sit in the space where you remember yourself as God. But that aspect of you is the one that's constantly pushing forward. And of course, it's the personal self that kind of ignores that voice or listens. And for students who find me specifically, they are listening, on some level. And sometimes it is just that there's a recognition, and I can't speak to, because it was the same for me when I met my guide, that there's this recognition that there's something powerful and there's something far greater going on in this interaction than I could put words to, but I don't know what it is, but I want more of that. And that's exactly how I felt. Because when I met my guide, it was the same thing. I had no clue. I had absolutely no clue that she was a guide. And when I met her in person, within probably 2 minutes of me being in her presence, I was just completely in tears. This complete basket case. Because her presence alone was enough to allow all of the pain to start to come up and out of me. And it was beautiful, really beautiful. At the time, I was really confused. Like, what is going on with this woman? But very much that. And I came into my own work from a very low place. I was not suicidal, but I really was struggling in my personal life. I space of the personality. I had been someone who'd always been very together and very intelligent and capable. And I had reached a point in my own life where I felt like it was all just falling apart. And for a lot of people, who would listen to this, they maybe are in the middle of that, because that seems to be one of the components that shows up the most frequently. That people really have hit a patch in life where it just feels like it's all falling apart. And at the time that it's happening, of course, it's very scary, and you feel like something horrible is going to happen. So there's this part of you searching for something that's going to save me. But the greater thing that's going on is it has to fall apart, right? And this is one thing that we move through over and over and over again on our paths, that there are places that we reach where now that aspect, it needs to fall apart so that it can be rebuilt from a different place. Even within, a job or an organization, sometimes the organization needs to fall apart so that when it gets rebuilt, it's rebuilt with different energy, and what sits underneath it is different and more supportive of what needs to happen now. And we have to remember that the personal self, or what most people want to term ego, it struggles so hard to keep things in this very stable place. It's all it wants. It's like what sits underneath it is very, very deep pain and a lot of fear. And so it just feels like if I can just get to this spot where I feel okay, like most people aren't even looking for, I want to feel great. It's just, they just want to feel okay. And if I can get there and just hold it, then okay, so now I can move through my life. But the reality is that, the universe is not stagnant ever. You're moving forward or you're moving backward, but you're never just standing still. And so that's why it's so scary for people to move into the challenging times when it feels like things are slipping away, or I don't have control, or whatever is happening. And what they can't see is that the gift is actually right there. If it's falling apart, it's actually because it's in your highest good for it to do so. And if you can start to view it just from that lens and see, okay, I don't. And I remember from growing up, that was something that my mom would have said, or even my grandmother, like, you don't have to know why for everything, but on one level, the only thing you do have to know is that it's all there for a reason, and it's in your best interest, And I was raised with that, so I had that. It doesn't make it easy to to walk it, but when it sits there in the back of your head, because it's kind of been programmed in, when you are laying on the bathroom floor sobbing because you feel like you can't do it one more day, something in there goes, okay, for whatever reason, this is in my highest good, and that's where I was. I was on my bathroom floor and calling out to a higher power just for something. And what I recognized, to kind of come full circle back to your question, what I recognized when I was on the bathroom floor was that the one thing that was coming out was this desire, like this burning desire for truth. It was truth. And it wasn't I want enlightenment or illumination or awakening. It wasn't any of that. It was, I just want to know what the truth is. Because where I felt in my world was like, there's all this stuff that's going on and that's been happening, and like I had some sense that I've been living my life through this, like I had blinders on, and like but there's something more, and I could feel it. And so when it got so bad for me, that was the thing that came forward. It was like, and I literally spoke to God. God, I don't care what it looks like, and I don't care what I have to do to find it. Can you just point me in the right direction? Because I want to know what the truth is. And I've had several students who've come from that place as well, and it's this burning desire. And you spoke to it when you said, people who have like done the classes or gotten involved in this path or that path or the other, but then they feel like there's still something they're not getting. Mm-hmm. And that is it. You have to remember that inside of you, the essence of you has never shifted, and it knows truth. So there's this part of you that's kind of the amnesiac, living this life that has this distant awareness that there is this thing that is true. Yeah. And all it can recognize is that what it has now isn't that. Yeah. It can't recognize what it is, but it just knows it's not this. Because if it was this, I'd know it. Like, you have this sense of that. Mm-hmm. And everyone in their own right timing will come into that space where it will be time for them to, walk into a room and meet their next guide. And, but all of and I have to be careful with the way I talk because, my work is all about not polarizing against anything. And so I always say to my students, it's very easy for people to get, really caught up in what I would call spiritual ego, especially when they're on a path and they really start moving with it and a lot happens. It's very easy at that point to now kind of look down on previous paths. And I'm very quick to correct anyone who speaks like that, because if it wasn't for that path, you wouldn't be here now. And they all are perfectly placed, and some will take you further, and that's absolutely true. But if it wasn't for all of it, you wouldn't get there. It's too much of a chasm. Yeah. Between being completely unconscious and then functioning consciously in the world from an awakened state. And you have to walk it. You don't jump it. It just doesn't happen like that.
I learned that the hard way. Okay, so I want to ask. So to lead in, I want to say that there were a lot of things in my life. There were paths or things I engaged in that got me close, and like I said, but there was always stuff left unresolved for me. And then I found you and this work, and that was profound. That was like, oh my God, like it's learning on steroids. That's such a basic way to put it. So, but I have found too in my own personal experience of you and the work that this is like nothing else that I had, not even close. It's not even close to anything else.
Right.
That I had found. Mm-hmm. And the other things were great. They were wonderful, and I understand the purpose of that. But it's like I found those things, but then I was catapulted in doing this work, and I was like, wait, this is like nothing else. So can you explain why that is? Why this kind of work takes it to a level that everything else seems to kind of stop right before? If I'm making any sense.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, now I want to be careful how I do this. While it is true that all paths are perfectly placed and all teachers are perfectly placed, it's also true that the vast majority of those who function in the capacity of a spiritual teacher or leader are functioning from the level of the personal self. So they aren't awakened beings who are there to guide, which is exactly why you look at any religion, world religion that came up and out of the teachings of a great master, and then you see where the religion itself has not manifested what the master was there to present. That's exactly why the master was functioning from that state, but the disciples who then carried on the work weren't capable of that yet. And so now what they're capable of doing is only functioning through the level of patterned consciousness. And they're still, there are far more awakened teachers on the planet now than ever before, but still, relatively small compared to how many teachers are out there in general. What was your question?
No, we're getting there. Like I was trying to. I wanted people to get a sense of why this work is
different.
Is very different. Like it gets in there. It's like it's almost like before I was doing things, But then once I found this work, it was tangible, it was real, it was profound.
Yes.
Like I could immediately apply stuff in a way that shifted my entire life.
Yes.
Not just, oh, I've learned this little concept, so I'll try to be more kind, or
Right.
which is good. It's a perfect thing to learn that. But this became life altering
Yes.
in every way. There was not a piece or a part of my life that was not immediately and profoundly transformed in the most beautiful way. Maybe not in the beginning, but in the most beautiful way. So I want people to maybe get an idea of why that is so, why this work is so powerful and so real and tangible.
Okay. Okay, so from it's right at the core of it, it's because this work functions from a completely different place. So it's kind of like the work that I do is, I tell people sometimes, because people have a really hard time describing, well, what, I do this work, but if someone asks me, what do you do? I don't know how to describe it. And sometimes I say to people, if you take the focus off the kind of the quote unquote spiritual aspect of it, you could look at it like psychotherapy on steroids, right? And because what we're doing is dissolving the program of the personal self, and it's very psychological work. But it's more than that, and this is where where psychology in general is held back, is because psychology in general doesn't recognize yet that person that they're dealing with, it's just a program. And as soon as psychology gets that, it starts functioning from that level, now they'll be able to be super effective in the work that they do. Right now, all they can do is teach a person to kind of repolarize their belief systems. And that can be wonderful and very healing for people, but it's not going to do anything to move them into a state of, consciously living in their lives. It's hard to, I don't really know how to word this. At the very core, what has happened to consciousness here is that it has fallen out of its state of recognizing itself to be the one, source. And because of it, it has taken on a false sense of identity that it calls me. And because of that, it's created this reality that it is separate from everything else. And it's not true. It never happened. It's not true for you today. It wasn't true for you yesterday. It won't be true for you tomorrow. But the ego, that personal self, likes to hold on to that very strongly. And all the teaching on the planet, other than those who teach true non-duality, all of the other teachings teach from the level of your ego being you, and it isn't. And another one of the phrases that we use in the work is that we aren't here to change anything, we're here to see through it. And that's the difference. In you could go to a psychotherapist and you can learn to change things, right? You can be in resistance to where you are in your life and want change. And of course, that's how people end up with me too. Mm-hmm. They want change. And the thing that's so liberating for people is when they finally get it, that they don't need to change anything. Now that sounds a little weird because you're like, well, why would I want to stay with things the way they are? Mm-hmm. And what you can't recognize in the beginning is that in doing dissolution work, where you literally go in and dissolve out the belief systems that have kept you polarized on one side of a spectrum, thinking this is right, that is wrong, or I want this, I don't want that. When that's dissolved, then whatever's meant for you in your highest good automatically comes forward. The universe brings that to you because it wants to support you. And the ego, the sense of the personal self, is the only thing that's blocking that from happening anyway. So to repolarize doesn't change anything. It can change something in your material day-to-day life, and it can be very good on a psychological level, but it won't do anything to give you greater peace, you see? Because peace lies in total allowance of what is, and you don't get there from wanting change.
Okay, so like when I hear you use certain terms, I remember in the beginning when I first met you, and you'd use certain words, in my head would be like, what is that? Like, what, you know? So when you say like living consciously or being unconscious, and dissolution work of the ego, polarization, non-duality,
Right.
can you sort of expand on those things more in layman's terms so that we can all understand better what that stuff means? Because they're terms that, I mean, even though I've worked with you for a long time, still the mind is like, what? Like, I'm not quite sure I get that. So they're difficult terms, and everybody in the world describes them differently.
Yes.
To hear people talk about enlightenment and self-consciousness and all those things. So can you sort of pick those apart a little bit for us to help us understand?
Yeah, so just from the very beginning, in the moment of the falling consciousness, and so just to say this planet, you know, people have an understanding that we're living in, you know, third density, or this is 3D, or whatever you want to call it, and a lot of people out there on TAS have an understanding that we're, you know, on an ascension path to move into 5D. Okay, so 5D being the space of what I would term the illumined worlds, which is all of the, you know, in the multiverse, the innumerable worlds where all of creation knows itself to be God. All right, there is no separation. There's individuation, but there's no separation. Does that make sense? You have to like, does that make sense?
To me, it does. But can you start there and expand a little bit more in case people are going, "What in the world are they talking about?"
Sure. Yeah. So let's use the human body as an example. So within the human body, if you take the body to be God, let's say that the body is God, the body of God. And you have however many trillions of cells in the body. Each one of those cells is individuated. It has a specific purpose, and it was created to do a specific thing. But it's not separate from the whole. There's nothing that separates it from God, even though it does seem to move differently than other cells and may not necessarily communicate fully. A cell down in my toe may not communicate with the cells in my brain, you know, however that works. But they're all one, and they're all working together in unison. And that's what consciousness as you is. It is individuated. You were created out of a very unique blending of rays of light, and they are unique to you, just like snowflakes are all completely unique. And so everything seen and unseen in creation is that level of unique. And here in this reality that everyone believes themselves to be, you know, planted in, consciousness identified with a concept, the concept being I. And if you can take it for a moment and recognize it makes it difficult because language is polarized. So in using language, we really can only point to things, and they're conceptual. But the experience of it is outside of concept altogether. And that's the walk of, you know, someone who is awakened, is they live outside of concept, because concept is all about polarization. So it makes it challenging for me to use words. I'll do the best I can, because they're there to be used, and they need to be used. But the concept of I, if you look at it, and I was actually trained as an English teacher, so this part's actually good for me. But the concept of I, if you just look at I, in the word I is also, you know, as soon as you say I, it also includes you, right? How can there be an I if there isn't a you, correct? And so that right there, that's polarization, right? For me to say me, there has to be you, and now it's this, it's separate, right? And this is what what consciousness got trapped in a moment of perceived, and I call it perceived separation because the separation never happened, but in a moment it actually thought itself to be separate from all that is. And in that moment, everything came into densification the way we experience it now. States of mind, all the downward states of mind came in, and coming out of those, the positive states of mind came in. Physical densification, the way we experience it, came in. Reincarnation came in. Karma came in. Like, it all formed simultaneously. And so the experience that is had is this world, this loop that everyone's trapped in, you know. But within it, it's not conscious. The loop itself is a program. And I often refer to it as a computer program. It's like, you know, we have someone on our board who is a computer programmer or developer. And I love to use him because he can speak to this. You know, like, if you sit down and write a program, and if you write it well enough, then you can flip a switch, it could go on autopilot, and you never have to touch it again. And that's accurate. And that's exactly what's going on here. Everyone is born here, and truly in the moment of birth, the veils are dropped. And so they come in not remembering who they are and carrying all of their memory of all of their experience. You know, I mean, you're an infinite being, beginningless and endless, and so you do have knowledge of all of that. But when you're born here, you don't remember who you were last time around, and you don't remember what you're supposed to do this time and what you've set up for yourself, and all of it's just kind of gone. So every time it feels like this new experience. And within it, it feels very much like a trap, you know, like you're running on this hamster and never get off. But the beautiful thing that we can do by utilizing the mind, we use the mind to dissolve the mind, which seems a little strange too, but that's exactly what happens. And by utilizing the mental faculty, we can go in and actually pave an inroad into consciousness where you can begin to become aware of how you've held your reality like this, you know, this being your conscious side, that you're very aware of all the beliefs that you do consciously hold, and you will support them and defend them. All the judgment that you hold, the desires you're aware of, the attachments that you have, those are all here consciously. Well, simultaneously, the exact opposite of that has to be held as well. And so it is, but it's held in the unconscious level. And that's the part that, of course, is hidden from you. And that's very specifically the work we do here, is we utilize your life experience to help you walk in, you know, keep shoveling through it so that you can get to a place where the unconscious level is allowed to come up. And the mind is extremely resistant to doing it. And that's why I would say that the work that we specifically do is so effective, because we systematically, the way that we do the work, we systematically are working at going deeper, 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 deeper. And it does it in such a way that the mind kind of relaxes into allowing it to happen. It's you have to think that, you know, the mind, it sees everything that's happening, and it is aware that there's something going on that is dangerous to it. And of course, the biggest fear it has is its own demise. So it can, if something is rushed into too quickly, the mind can go very quickly into a state of denial and repression, and it'll really push back because it fears that you're trying to annihilate it. So if you do it properly and you don't, you know, try to jump the chasm and you just go step by step by step, then each step the mind puts up a little fight, but then it sees, okay, it's still okay, you know? Like, there's this piece that just came up that now I'm aware of, and I'm still here, and it's okay, right? And it allows for the next time, and then the next time, and the next time. And ultimately, it allows for you to be able to be completely objective and to function outside of the attachments of the personal self, to truly see what's going on within the life of that personal self. You know, like you see it from back here, and you can be completely objective about it. And then from there, you're finally becoming truly conscious, because the patterning itself, the program that is your identification as your personality, it is anything but objective. It's completely subjective, and it's all determined based on the imprinting that was placed on it by usually the parents, but other siblings, grandparents, important figures in your life at a very young age. And then that imprinting that's placed, on a child is then reinforced going as they continue to get older and older, because it continues to run, and every time it runs and every time it's identified with, then it reinforces the pattern more and more and more. And from a biochemical space, if you look at the way the synapses fire in the brain and the way the neurons are all working together, then you can recognize that that's exactly what's going on, because connections are made because of the way that they all fire, and connections will be made. But the more, kind of like if you take a drug, the first time you do it, it's extremely powerful, but then after the 10th time you've done it, it doesn't have quite the same effect. So you need more to create the same effect. Well, it's creating these longer term connections, and it's kind of like if you started with a connection that's like the width of a piece of hair. Over the course of years, it turns into something, the width of like an extension cord, and it just gets bigger every time it runs. So to think that you're going to go in, so if you look at it from a space of how easy is it to break a piece of hair versus if I take an extension cord and try to break it, it's a lot harder. Well, so to think that you're going to go into the mind and completely break it is not very realistic, right? But the way that we do our work, it actually allows that to happen. Because remember, we aren't trying to change it. We're here to just see through the whole thing. It's kind of like you're here to pull back the curtain and see what's making it all work to begin with. And in doing that, the synapses, they ultimately just stop firing altogether. Because there's no me identifying with that story anymore. And if that's not happening, I always say the mind suffers from neglect. I mean, that's basically what we're doing is you stop listening to the stories, you stop paying attention, you stop acting on them, and being very reactive when this particular story runs. Now I have to do something, and when all of that stops, and you can see it from back here, now you're capable of living consciously. You can look at it and make choice based on what's really happening. Not based on your own perception because of the beliefs you hold about what's happening. And of course, that's what's going to dictate your choice anyway. So your choice isn't even choice the way you think it is until that point when you can be truly objective in your world. And then you do have choice, to function on a conscious level, which is a beautiful thing. Just a beautiful thing, What you know.
So, other questions that I know that I had in the beginning, because I came from a certain religious background, was, and of course, the religious background that I came from couldn't answer my questions. That's why I kept pushing and pushing, trying to find what I was looking for, the truth. What about if people say, is this sacrilegious? Like, if this makes me question everything, if I'm getting into a spot where I'm going beyond all known concepts or all judgments about this religion is better than this, or this is religious, that's not, or this is spiritual, that's not, this is sacrilegious, this is not. What about questions that arise like that for people who might be seeking the truth but are a little bit afraid to seek the truth?
There's a lot of different answers to that question. Well, another teaching that we give is a very simple one, but really profound when you get it. And it is that your life is your spiritual path. People like to compartmentalize their lives. This is who I am when I'm an employee, and this is who I am when I'm a daughter, and this is who I am when I'm a wife, and this is who I am as a mother, and this is who I am spiritually. And the greater understanding is that everything is spiritual. Now, from my English background, I would take it from this space that if all there is spirit, meaning God is all that is, and everything that exists within God, big beach ball that is God, and everything in existence is within it. So if that's accurate, then there's nothing that's not spiritual. If all there is spirit, right? So from that place, that's a really profound thing for people to start to sit with and go, oh, could it be spiritual for me to go to the grocery store, or for me to go watch a movie, or to do anything, and it's like, oh, well, what does that mean? Now what does that mean in my world? Because that will completely shift the way you look at your life. I mean, just that one piece. And for people who, are Christians or Buddhists or whatever they are, and they're happy with it, then beautiful. Be happy with it. I'm not here to tear anyone's religion down at all. And the beautiful thing, functioning from a higher level of understanding, is that I see truth in all religion. I see a lot of untruth in all religion as well. But it's all dictated based on where you perceive it from. So you can read the Bible, and within the Bible itself, I can give you scads of examples of how polarity is being held in place by the teachings in the Bible, but I can show you exactly where truth is in the Bible as well, So it just depends on where you view it from. So the question for the person who might say this feels sacrilegious, is are you comfortable with just having your view of the world be your view of the world? And if that's where they want to function from, then beautiful, continue walking it. It doesn't need to change for you, And when it's time for you to change, it'll change. But for other people, and I was that way. I mean, from the time I was little, I had this just complete understanding from the time I was little that I was God. Like, I got that. And I couldn't talk about it to the place where I could explain it to someone. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it. And I knew God existed here. It was this heart thing. And I was United Methodist, and we used to go to church every Sunday, which was fine. I really liked our minister, and he was really cool. But I was always like, so why do we make such a big deal about going to church? And you'd hear people talk about, well, that's where you talk to God. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I talk to God all the time. Why do I have to be in a building? And so that was there for me. And so as I got older within the structure of the church, I started questioning things that were being taught, because there were things that just didn't make sense to me. They didn't add up. And I know a lot of people, really all the people who end up working with me have had that experience. Something is not sitting right. Yeah. Yeah. I may not have the answer, but it's just not sitting right, and I trust it, and that's the hard thing. A lot of people, because there's so much guilt that can be built into religion, a lot of people, when they experience that, then they feel bad about themselves for experiencing that, and that's kind of dangerous. And I wasn't that kid. Luckily, my parents raised me to be extremely independent and to question things, and God knows I did. When it came to religion, I questioned everything. But it was good, because I, just had this sense that there was more. And for someone who's in that space, where they've kind of, reached that kind of maximum level of what they're going to gain from their chosen religion, and it doesn't even have to be a religion, just whatever path it is. When you've reached it, I think you have an awareness on some level that you've really reached it. And that's when you start kind of looking, and you'll overhear someone talking about whatever, and then you're like, oh, what's that about, And all I can say from that space is, if you've experienced that, you have to just allow it to unfold for you, If you're going to now be open to other things, be open to other things, A lot of people say they're open to other things, but then all they're really looking for is more proof that where they've been is where they should stay. Mm-hmm. So if that's all you ever do is to recognize that about yourself and just stop. If you want to stay where you're going to stay, then stay there and be happy with it, And if you can't be happy with it, then it's telling you it's time to move on and do something different, But the one thing about this level of work is that you have to question absolutely everything. And I mean everything. There's nothing that's exempt from your own self-inquiry. So there aren't a lot of people yet. There will be at some point, when humanity's really ready. But there aren't a lot of people still who will truly question, from a very honest place, everything. Because there are, let's face it, the whole world right now is just functioning out of belief. And when you get in there and you start questioning your belief systems, and then you get into the ones that are really touchy, it's difficult, really challenging. And that's the part where your relationship with your teacher or your guide, whatever we want to call it, is so important, because there's a level of trust that has to sit there. Because at those times when it's so challenging, everything in you is going to be like, I want to run away. Well, I want to run away. I don't want to do this. Don't want to do this. And then you'll have your teacher, who's not going to sit there and coddle you, because we can't. Because I can't allow you to think for a second that your story's real, because it isn't. And if I come in from that space, it doesn't mean I can't be kind, certainly. But if I come in from the space that's kind of like, oh, poor baby, then all I'm doing is making that more real for you, And so the guide is there to say, keep pushing. You've got to keep pushing through it, I understand it hurts. I've been there myself, right? But you've got to be strong and just keep doing it. And we can encourage you and say, you're doing good. Keep going, keep going. But ultimately, when it gets to the truly difficult pieces, without that trust, you just won't be able to push yourself through it, Yeah. And that's something that's built over time with in the relationship with the guide and the student, is that trust. And it happens as, they're giving you information, and at that same time that they're giving you information, you're having your own experiences that are confirming what you've been given. And then the really beautiful thing is when you reach a place where now you're having your experiences prior to getting any information, and now you get the information as true confirmation of your experience, and now you trust your own experience. And that's ultimately where everyone has to end up, that you're trusting your own experience, and you don't have to get it from out here, because that can work in reverse for people. That can become a block if you're constantly looking for, well, you teach me, what should come next, or you tell me this, or you tell me that. Well, that's great, but then what mind wants to do with that is then when you have an authentic experience of it, of your own, mind will question it and go, oh, you're imagining that, or she told you that, so you think it's real, and that's, that's not good. Then you have to undo all of that. So it's far better to not be given, I don't spoon feed anybody, because I want you to walk it. And that way you come out of it and no one can take it away from you, It's kind of like my mom always said about education. She said, that's the beautiful thing about an education is once you get it, no one can ever take it away from you. And this is the same thing. You walk that path and you have those experiences, and you know what it's like to have an experience, and then you would email me, and then I'd email you back confirming for you what you had, and now it's like there's a beautiful moment in there. You're like, oh, like it was real. Yeah. Like I know it was real. Yeah. And that's really key, because the mind wants to doubt everything. It's just hardwired to do that. And it takes a lot of strength to stand in, what you experience as your own doubt and be like, no, I know what I experienced. And no one's going to tell me different. I don't care how crazy it sounds. No one's going to tell me different. It takes a lot of strength to do that. Yeah.
So I want to have you tell everybody a little bit about the Kumara Center. So you founded the Kumara Center. So, and you've also got Create a New World. So there's a lot of things going on, ways people can plug in. If they resonate with something you've said here and they're like, wait a minute, I've got to know more about what she's talking about. Or if they feel compelled to be just a part of the community for now because, they resonate with all the wonderful stuff that's going on. Can you talk just a little bit about the Kumara Center, how people can plug in and engage?
Sure. So officially we are the Kumara Center for Spiritual Awareness, and we offer, probably the biggest thing that we offer is a way to engage with the teachings. And the teachings, when I say that, people go, well, what is that? Basically it's very ancient, very, very ancient teachings that have been on the planet. They actually come from off planet, but they've been on the planet for thousands of years, but have been held, kind of under the surface, because humanity has not been ready to really come in contact with, and there are more still coming. It's not like it's all sitting right here. But these teachings aren't widely available yet, and that is one thing that we do offer that is pretty unique. I hold a weekly satsang here in Charlotte, where I'm here and I bring the energies in, and people can come and basically kind of receive a discourse, that whatever topic I may want to talk about that night, or are given the opportunity to ask questions, and we do some meditation together as well, and so it's a very full hour and a half. And then we also offer satsang on internet radio, so we utilize BBS radio, and we're on with them live every Thursday night from 9 to 10, so people can listen in from anywhere in the world. We also have archives that are available for free for people to listen to. We've been doing that for about 2.5 years now. And we also offer, for people really interested in going into the work, there's a very kind of structured and unique way we do what we call the work, not to be confused with Byron Katie's The Work. We do work called processing work, which is that mental component that I talked about. And I lead workshops in that. So generally we've got 2 separate workshops. I had to break it into 2 different weekends, but each one is a 2-day workshop, and it's all based on how to do this dissolution work that we talk about. We also hold mini intensives that are based on meditation, where I facilitate, again, bringing the energies, and we go into very deep meditation, longer periods of meditation. We do that for anywhere from a day and a half up to a full Friday to Sunday weekend thing. That's the majority of the work that I'm personally doing, and then we have people who, like yourself, who are members of our core council, board members for the center, who also have their individual work that they do as well, that we open up to other people if they're interested. So we offer, I think we have everything, hopefully, on our calendar through kumaracenter.org. We are a nonprofit organization in North Carolina. And through Create a New World, I actually started Create a New World first. It was my little baby in the beginning, and I wanted, I had kind of walked my own path, and I knew it was very specific, right? There's no questioning that. It's very specific. And most people, I of course knew most people wouldn't be drawn to it, which is fine. But I thought, what a shame if we're missing this opportunity to kind of be a source of outreach to people who truly just are aware that they do want to function from their heart, And while that is the overreaching goal of dissolution work, is so that you do function from your heart, which is the God within. A lot of people, don't have an interest in doing spiritual work, and that's fine, right? So we started Create a New World to offer a way to just allow people to come together more as community, from that space of just heart-centered being together, having fun together, learning together, exploring different ideas and things. And that was where you met me, right? Mm-hmm. It was that meetup that we started years ago. And still running, just an opportunity for people to come and watch a movie or whatever it is that we have going on. Meditation, all kinds of things. And we still run it as, we aren't a meetup, but we do run it through Meetup if people are especially in the Charlotte area on Meetup. We have Create a New World and the Kumara Center. And then we also take part in one thing we do with Create a New World that I really personally love is that we do this thing called Hold the Space. And holding the space just means that you go in, and I remember I talked to you earlier about the capacity to function from a very objective level. Mm-hmm. So in holding the space, what you do is you go in from the space of your heart and just be there, setting whatever the intention is for that time, so that whatever you're focused on, you're not there to judge it, you're not there to try to change it, you're not there to do anything other than to be the conduit for very pure energy to move through and to do whatever it needs to do in everyone's highest good. So every Wednesday night we do that for 10 minutes, just at 9 o'clock on Wednesdays, where we ask people just to go into a very short kind of meditation and hold the space of loving equanimity for humanity and the planet. And then for the equinox and solstices, we do a larger one with a group called Add Your Energy, where we do a full 2-hour meditation that I do a whole playlist for and all, where we ask people to do the same thing. So either, for 2 hours from 7 to 9 p.m. your time, wherever you are on the planet, if you want to go drumming or dancing, or you want to sing, or you want to take a walk in nature, or you want to go into meditation or prayer, whatever works for you, if you can just be in your heart for that 2 hours, and set the intention that you're there to just allow whatever energies are disqualified that need to be cleared, that you're there to function as a vehicle so they can move through you and kind of get transmuted, then that's such a beautiful thing. And as we all continue to grow that and do that more and more collectively, it exponentially creates an enormous impact on the consciousness of the planet. So I really am a big proponent of that one. I love doing that work. Did I answer all?
Yes.
How to contact us?
Yes, and that'll be on the website. So if somebody wants to check out the calendar of events, you can check that out. And there'll be changes coming to the website as we're expanding things and adding to the calendars. And there's a way to contact the core council through there if you have questions. So this was just the initial conversation. We wanted to kind of, break ground with just a conversation. And then we want to continue going forward with conversations like this where, either I'll bring questions forward that I know were pressing questions for me in the beginning, or maybe they're pressing questions for me now. We're also going to take questions from people who come to the website or people in the group who start learning about these videos and go, wait a minute, I have a question that I'd love to get her viewpoint on or get her to take on. So if you have questions, if you have anything that's your burning question or your pressing question, or you have any comments about anything, we want to start having people send their questions in. And there'll be more information on the website coming about how to do that and how to start getting involved with these conversations. So, because this just started, this just kicked off. So we want to move with this to get people more engaged and our little chats.
And they certainly could include a question in the comments section for YouTube, where the video is going to sit anyway. So
lovely. All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
For everything today.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's fun.
Thanks.